So today's story is about Brij Bhushan Sharan Singh. You'll remember this photograph. He was accused of sexual harassment on multiple counts by women wrestlers while he was heading the Wrestling Federation in India. A Delhi court has today acquitted him of all of those charges because we understand, according to the court, there were inconsistencies and contradictions in the evidence presented during the trial. Now, before we go further, we must point out that an acquittal does not mean that nothing happened. It means that the prosecution was not able to prove guilt beyond reasonable doubt. And that actually puts our entire justice system under reasonable doubt, because I'm going to take you through the beats of this whole story. It played out over the course of 3 years, and it's indicative of what happens in India when women go up against a powerful man. Before we go further, like, share, subscribe. Remember, sign up for our membership where you will get access to a news bulletin every day, where in 10 minutes you can find out what's going on around the world without any of the trauma that comes with it. Okay, so for decades, Brij Bhushan Sharan Singh was one of the most influential figures of Indian wrestling, and he is one of Uttar Pradesh's most powerful politicians. He's called Bahubali, or strong man. Elected into parliament 6 times, 5 on the BJP ticket, 1 on the Samajwadi Party ticket. He built a reputation of having enormous political influence in eastern Uttar Pradesh. And inside of Indian wrestling, however, his influence was arguably even greater. He was the president of the Wrestling Federation of India. He presided over the body responsible for organizing competitions, for selecting athletes, overseeing the careers of Indian wrestlers. And that gave him extraordinary influence over the lives of these wrestlers. And remember, there were a lot of women wrestlers involved. Now, what happened is back in 2023, 6 women wrestlers accused him of sexual harassment. The alleged incidents, according to the charges that were later filed by Delhi police, took place over the course of several years between 2016 and 19. Sometimes in the office, sometimes in his home, sometimes in hotel rooms, and it just went on. One of these women was Olympian Vinesh Phogat. At the time, the identities were not made public, but later she came out herself and she said that she was one of those who filed a complaint. Now, when the women first approached the authorities, they were met with inaction. Nothing happened. And then they did something extraordinary. India's most celebrated wrestlers, Olympic medalists, Commonwealth champions, world champions, they left their training rounds and they sat on the streets in protest in Jantar Mantar in Delhi. This happened on the 23rd of April 2023. Now, their demand was simple: register an FIR and investigate these allegations, remove him from his position while the investigation is taking place. Now, the sports ministry assured them that they will put a committee together, and this oversight committee will investigate and it will run the federation in the meantime. So the wrestlers called off their protest for the time being. The sports ministry put together a 5-member oversight committee headed by Mary Kom, the boxing champion, and gave it the job of investigating in 4 weeks and in the meantime running the federation's administration. The committee submitted its report in April. That report was not made public. Nobody could see what was in it. No criminal proceedings followed. No action was announced against Brij Bhushan Sharan Singh. And the women wrestlers who were protesting felt betrayed. They returned to Jantar Mantar, this time demanding not a committee but an FIR and a criminal investigation. Then came the big turning point. Remember, months had gone past since this had started. The wrestlers then approached Supreme Court. They argued that despite allegations of serious sexual offences, Delhi police had not registered an FIR. 2 days later, the Supreme Court sent a notice to the Delhi police demanding that FIR, and events moved quickly. On the 28th of April, the Delhi police registered 2 FIRs against Brij Bhushan Sharan Singh. One was about the 6 complaints from the 6 adult wrestlers, and the second one was made by a minor wrestler. It was an allegation by a minor wrestler, so it came under POCSO, which is crime of a sexual nature against children. In June, 2 months after that FIR was filed and investigation was completed, Delhi police filed a charge sheet against Brij Bhushan Sharan Singh. He was accused of assault, criminal force to outrage the modesty of a woman, dealing with sexual harassment, stalking, and criminal intimidation. And his close associate in the Wrestling Federation, the Assistant Secretary Vinod Tomar, was also named in the charge sheet. Now, according to that police charge sheet, and this was the first time any sort of criminal details were made available or made public, there was a pattern of sexual harassment. The allegation said that he would touch them inappropriately during training camps, during tournaments, during official meetings. He would touch their breasts and their chest without consent on the pretext of checking their breathing or their posture. He would attempt to hug them and embrace them against their wishes. He would run his hands all over their bodies in a way that complainants described sexual and unwelcome. Sexually colored remarks, including comments about their appearance and their bodies, inviting athletes to meet him alone in his office or in his residence, making them uncomfortable, intimidation. Some wrestlers alleged that they feared speaking out because he could control selections, careers, and opportunity within Indian wrestling. And it said that this had happened in the Wrestling Federation office, in Brij Bhushan Sharan Singh's official residence, in his office, and during international competitions when they traveled overseas. Now, that was one FIR because of those six adult wrestlers. Remember, there was a second FIR because one complainant was a minor. In that second complainant, the police actually closed the case. They said that the complainant and her father no longer supported the allegations, and the investigators found insufficient evidence to continue. And the Delhi court accepted that closure report in May 2025, bringing the minors' case to an end. Now, this left the case of six adult wrestlers. July 2023, when the Delhi court took cognizance of the charge sheet and summoned Brij Bhushan Sharan Singh, they appeared before the court that month. They were granted interim bail, but the legal battle was to continue. So he's been out on bail this entire time. Almost a year later, the court examined evidence during the investigation, decided that there was enough material to formally frame charges. So, Brij Bhushan Singh's offenses included sexual harassment, criminal intimidation, and outraging the modesty of a woman. The trial began, but it was in camera, which means that it took place behind closed doors. Media was not allowed to attend the trial. And this is because, as per the Indian law, when the allegation is sexual offenses, there is a attempt to protect the privacy and the identity of the complainants. Now, over the next 2 years, the court heard that testimony, and the prosecution was to establish a pattern of sexual harassment, which obviously they have failed to do. Final arguments were on the 2nd of July this year. Then the court took a month to give its judgment, and it gave its judgment today. Additional Chief Judicial Magistrate Ashwini Parvar decided that Brij Bhushan Sharan Singh and Vinod Kumar are to be acquitted. Now, according to one of Singh's lawyers, the court said that there was inconsistencies and contradictions in the testimonies that the prosecution called for witnesses, and concluded that the prosecution failed to establish guilt beyond reasonable doubt. The full written judgment has not come. So the media can't attend, a judgment because it's in media. So you are dependent on one of the lawyers coming out and telling you what happened, or the actual judgment that gets printed out and published. We don't have access to that judgment yet. So we don't know from the judge directly what the reasonings were. All we know is what Brij Bhushan Sharan Singh's lawyer has come out and said. Sharan Singh is treating it like this verdict has vindicated him. He said, I said from the first day, every single allegation against me will be proved false. I have faced the harshest punishment. Today, the court has acquitted us with honor. Today is a moment of happiness. Within hours of that verdict, Olympian Vinesh Phogat has announced that they will challenge that acquittal, which means that it will now go before the Delhi High Court. The High Court will not conduct the trial all over again. What it will do instead is it will examine the judgment of the trial court, the evidence, the witness testimonies, the legal reasoning, to decide whether that acquittal should stand or not, or whether it should be opened and heard again. It can uphold the verdict and order further proceedings, or it can decide to open the case one more time, where whichever side loses can then has the option of going to Supreme Court. So today's verdict is a major milestone, but it's not the final chapter. And through this entire case, it was obvious that this individual was extremely, extremely powerful, because the Delhi police just refused to file an FIR against him until the Supreme Court told them to do so. They were Olympic medal winners who were sitting in Jantar Mantar, on whom Amir Khan had made films. And they were sitting in Jantar Mantar demanding that the person who was sexually harassing them be examined, investigated criminally. And they got no response. They were dragged away by the police. Those visuals were stark, and we remember those visuals as and when they happened. And it was only after the Supreme Court stepped in that there was any sort of investigation from the side of the Delhi police. And now we understand that the prosecution was not able to prove any of this, or was not able to prove it beyond reasonable doubt. Of course, now we looked to the High Court because this case will obviously go to the High Court, but it makes you stop and wonder how hard it is, even for someone who has won an Olympic medal for the country, which means you have access to media, you have access to social media, you have the ability to get your story told. Even then, it is so difficult in our country to get justice or to go up against powerful people. And I want to remind you here, and this is a really important factor, that when the wrestlers sat in protest, they used very polite language. बड़ी तमीज से उन्होंने बोला था कि इन्वेस्टिगेशन कर लो. Nobody used bad language. They behaved like very respectable daughters of this country. And still there was no justice. Makes you stop and think, right?